This video was brought to you by my supporters on Patreon. Make a pledge today for early access to content, scripts, uncut audio recordings, and you might even get a video request. More patrons means polls, exclusive updates, and more, so join the Haunted House today for as little as $1 a month. Cheers! Today, we take a little trip in the nostalgia box to see how the Cybermen got revived back in 2006, and how the show predicted the rise of Apple AirPods 10 years in advance. It does seem a little strange that I skipped over these episodes before, considering how vital they are to one's understanding of the Series 2 finale. Back then, I was probably more concerned about picking episodes that are more noteworthy in the canon, as I remembered these two being passable at best. However, since watching Star Wars Clone Wars and reading the Berserk manga, I've found this idea of arcs very interesting. As such, you've now seen all my reviews covering the Peter Tyler arc. Well, Peter and Parallel Peter, but you get my point. Anyway, my main focus in rewatching these episodes is to see if my mind has changed about them, and, of course, to find out if they sucked or not. Here we go. John Lumic gets a great introduction. The first view of him we see is from a close-up on his mouth, then seeing him wheel out of the shadows. This story definitely takes cues from Frankenstein. A new form of life is certainly a strange idea to conceptualize, especially considering how monumental these monsters were in the classic era of Who. Well, I mean, apparently. They are in quite a few episodes, like The 10th Planet, The Tomb of the Cybermen, Revenge of the Cybermen, Earthshock, Attack of the Cybermen, and Silver Nemesis. I really wanted that to sound as cool as when I read out the Dalek titles however many years ago, but I don't think it works quite as well. Accompanied by strange choral music and surreal sound effects, we see a silhouette standing in front of a blinding light. You know what creature this is, but the show holds off on giving us a proper reveal, for what's to come will make your wait worthwhile. I love this opening. Oh yeah, I forgot Mickey was in this episode. Poor bugger. He thought coming along would be all fun and games, and now he's just a third wheel in the party. Making him hold down a button for no reason was hilarious, and the Doctor getting his comeuppance for doing so immediately afterwards was great too.
No, I know exactly what I'm doing.
Thing is though, I'm not really sure how I feel about these dramatics surrounding the TARDIS being quote-unquote dead. I love the idea of the time vortex being gone, and child me probably would have believed him wholeheartedly. Having bountiful experience with the show now, however, a thought like, of course she's not dead. The show must go on and on and on ran through my head. After that though, we got to see Parallel London, which was a great bit. Mickey taking the reins, explaining parallel universes to the uninitiated, seeing the Zeppelins, a president of the UK, and you can even get hold of a gun in Parallel UK too. All the little touches made to create a parallel world are highly creative. I'm so glad I reviewed Father's Day recently as well, because the emotional impact of that episode still lingers for Rose even here. The whole "trust me on this" advert appears just at the right time after the Doctor gives her a lecture about how he isn't her dad. Then we hear the catchphrase said over and over again, emphasizing that Rose is gonna have to trust the Doctor and to be wary of her emotions. This is something that runs through the entire story for Rose and makes a good challenge for her as a character. With everything she's seen up to this point, this is a test of will for her as a companion for the Doctor. Then we meet successful Pete. It's thoroughly entertaining to see Jackie, now a privileged wife, living in a mansion. Despite her circumstances being radically different, her attitude and viciousness towards her husband still lingers, making for some really hilarious moments. Unhappy with the 40th birthday sign, a bunch of flowers that weren't hand cut by some celebrity, and then the cherry on the cake that Rose is a dog. Prime Doctor Who script writing, ladies and gentlemen. Even with all his success though, Pete is still subservient to John Lumic, who is pulling the strings behind the scenes on everything now. This bit with the metal coming out of the earpods was great too. We get these synecdoches of the Cybermen shown in the form of a humanoid outline at the beginning, and here we see the headpiece briefly too. Later we see their feet and hear their thunderous footsteps, still leaving trails of breadcrumbs without revealing the crown jewels until the right moment. Then we come to a bit of a cringy scene with the homeless getting turned into Cybermen. Don't get me wrong, I like the idea, but the willingness for these men to walk into a van because some cockney codger says so shows a level of misunderstanding towards the homeless that just didn't sit right with me. It could have been handled better, combined with this Exposition Eddie character named Jake appearing here, who just happened to be in the right place at the right time. Even the bits with the Doctor finding a tiny speck of light felt a bit off for me. Oh, don't mind me, I'm just breathing 10 years of my life into lighting a bulb. Like, come on. One minute the Doctor shows concern for Rose being left on her own in a parallel world, and the next he forgets all about her. This moment just establishes that the team has 24 hours in this world, and that the Doctor has a shiny thing to fend off Cybermen later on. However, when the boys regroup with Rose, and how the Doctor's companions essentially abandon him right here was a great bit. It's essentially the Doctor's fault this awkward social situation has happened, culminating from his treatment of Mickey and trying to act as a father figure to Rose. He has the right, but curiosity has gotten the better of his human companions, and it's not even his fault they're here right now, so it makes for a really sad moment to see them all split up. The Cybus Industries logo being on the Cybermen was a great touch. It's a 21st century take on beings that originally came from another planet, now they're being built by a corporation in another dimension. Awesome. The accompanying musical motif, bwah, 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 is just insane as well. I love hearing that little melody get blasted out throughout these stories. The earpods worn by everyone in the world got creepier still when the crowd stopped to get a download into their brains. It's fascinating to make comparisons to smartphones and the technology that has come to us since this episode aired. Maybe smartphones are just a stepping stone towards this direct fusion of information to the brain as the show predicts. Of course, this isn't a futuristic episode, but you can do an awful lot when you start to tweak certain parts of society for a parallel universe scenario. Like, what happens when you get rid of the monarchy and replace it with a presidency? Not a lot, but you may get things like technological leaps and privacy invasion. More power to private companies means that even the government can be bought out. It's definitely a great thought exercise, and I'm glad they put as much effort into making this world as strange and different as they did. This is most effectively shown when Mickey sees his grandmother, who is now going through what Rose went through in Father's Day. He'll gladly be called Ricky if it means he can get some additional time with his dead relative. Even the broken carpet on the stairs that caused her death still protrudes Mickey's vision. It's a saddening moment seeing him blame himself for her death. There's some ghostly yet beautiful music flowing through this scene too, which I really loved. That all stops suddenly, however, as Mickey is kidnapped by his so-called friends. Instead of pretending to be Ricky out of love, he has to do it for his survival now, staring in the face of people he's never met. That is, until Mickey meets Ricky, which was just straight up awesome. The fact they think he's a clone was great, but the best part for me is that Mickey is presented as this yin and yang character in the story. A light Mickey and a dark Ricky, London's most wanted and London's most loved, teaming up to take down Cybus Industries. Then on the blimp, Lumic is showing the president a presentation on his potential Cybermen. I loved that we hear his voice as though he's giving a speech, only to then see him breathing into his mask. It's just a nice trick of the sound that gives his whole operation an automated feeling, making his character show foresight too. Then, after inevitably being turned down by the British government, Lumic presses the big red point of no return button and the homeless get turned into machines. I found Mr. Crane playing The Lion Sleeps Tonight to be a fantastic moment too. Such a light-hearted piece of music contrasted starkly with the unseen horror of man becoming machine. Accompanied by these shots of metal pipes, machinery and factory corridors made for a chilling moment. The music itself loses its bass as the shots of these corridors appear. Not only does the music become literally more hollow, but it genuinely becomes more tinny in quality, as though all of the life was drained from the song, like the life being drained from these poor homeless chaps that will soon become the first Cybermen. To see Rose and the Doctor then in waiting uniforms was rather humorous too. too. It was a bit strange that the Doctor asked Rose, "Who do you want to be?" despite Rose asking right afterwards why they aren't dressed as the rich instead of staff. It was weird too how they got to wait at the party without obstacles. How exactly does psychic paper get you into a party? It's not like you'd rock up to one with ID to prove who you are if you're invited, nor would you do the same to prove you're a waiter. But look at their funny uniforms, Harry! Watching Jackie pick up Doggy Rose seemed to have a bit of a nullified effect, seeing as we saw this reveal earlier, but the Doctor's reaction was fucking priceless. There was a great moment too with Pete catching up with Rose essentially, and I love this shot of Pete saying that he's been married to Jackie for 20 years because Rose is once more having to behave like this is their first time meeting. More Father's Day moments mean more dramatic weight, and it's great that both stories connect so well together. Even Rose getting completely shot down by Jackie for getting ahead of herself was awesome too. It's the gingerbread house temptations the Doctor was talking about earlier that make these moments so effective in the story. And then this sequence with the Cybermen smashing into the house was fantastic. To see the pair looking out of the window to get a view with the responding shots of the Cybermen slowly coming into focus, stomping louder and louder until
Cybermen.
Fucking A. I got goosebumps rewatching this moment. The Cybermen are ominous, the music blasting that theme out continuously, and also this is the first time one of them says delete. I guess if you want to put the Cybermen on level with the Daleks, you might as well give them a catchphrase so they can have a shouting match should they ever meet. Then it becomes a massacre. All these people getting electrocuted and the gang getting surrounded outside. Oh, it's glorious.
We surrender! Take us to be processed.
You are rogue elements.
But we surrender.
You are incompatible.
But this is a surrender.
You will be deleted.
But we surrender.
You are inferior.
But this is a surrender.
Man will be reborn as Cyberman.
But we're surrendering. Listen to me. We surrender.
But you will perish
But we surrender.
under maximum deletion. Delete.
But we surrender. But this is a surrender. But we're surrendering. Listen to me. We surrender.
So, did it suck? Nah mate, this is a well good episode. It ain't perfect, but it's very enjoyable. The creativity, the characters, the music, all are astoundingly compiled to a great story that escalates in intensity and enjoyability, crescendoing at the end to show that the Cybermen are back and they mean business. I give Rise of the Cybermen an 8 out of 10. The Doctor manages to blast his way out of being encircled with the shiny blue thing he found in the bottom of the TARDIS, and that crazy Welsh woman in the blue van turns up to rescue them all.
Everybody, in!
I think it was great that Ricky revealed himself not to be this uber-anarchist, but merely London's most wanted for parking tickets. It starts introducing this idea that Ricky is replaceable and that Mickey might actually be the man for the job of taking down Cybus Industries with Jake, as morbid as that sounds. Lumic then rolls out full cyber upgrades across London, which is presented in rather annoying fashion. We see this stupid filming the TV news report declaring the city is now under martial law. I guess it's kinda meta, but I really don't like the way these sequences are filmed. It makes sense to see them when characters are watching TV, like in Aliens of London or Army of Ghosts, but nobody watches any TV in these episodes, so shunting in these news reports feels quite out of place. One thing I really appreciated about these Cybermen, however, was that they were human in origin, not alien. This makes them upgrading everybody fit in quite nicely with modern times. Ever since mobile phones have become something increasingly present in our lives, upgrading is just a word that has come about from the communications industry to sell more phones. This episode toys with this idea to the extreme. When you upgrade, you get a nice new camera and more memory, at the expense of your humanity. The sheer amount of cyber patrolling that we see on the streets is awesome. It feels like there are thousands of them, despite probably only a few suits would have been made for the episodes. Having these sequences nullifies the need for the news reports, because this is how you show scale. Also, what a great idea setting up the factory of Lumic's cybernetic operations in Battersea Power Station. Yeah, I know it's probably filmed somewhere in Wales, but hey, I was convinced. Then Ricky gets killed, and I absolutely love the silence that follows his death. As Mickey looks into the faces of the Cybermen, still as statues, it truly emphasizes the lack of humanity left in them, making them quite terrifying. This idea is further explored when Mr. Crane is brought before Lumic, who didn't quite like the sound of upgrading, but still got dragged to the boss all the same. It's rather fitting that even his most loyal follower plans on putting a stop to the insanity, with his own life forfeit as a result. There's this feeling of shared humanity even amongst those that work for Lumic, right up until the last moments.
I will upgrade, only with my last breath.
Yup, definitely sounds like a stubborn old granddad that's still using a brick phone and refuses to get a smartphone. With that, the inmates officially run the asylum. The remaining 5 humans and Time Lord establish a nice simple plan between them. Each role fitted the characters well, especially Rose, who is tasked with showing no emotion. Again, this ties in with her test of will established earlier, proving to be quite the challenge for her, seeing as an alternate Pete and alternate Jackie are running around. Mickey is tasked with filling the hole that Ricky left when he died, leaving the Doctor to compliment hot dogs?
I've got a hot dog in there, I'm starving. Of all the things to wish for, that's mechanically recovered meat.
I know, it's the Cyberman of food, but it's tasty.
I don't really have much else to say about this woman's remaining segments. She was rather disposable, to be honest. I mean, Christ, that pretty much goes for all the Welsh characters in this show. Bit racist, isn't it? Once Rose and Pete get into the power station, there's a bunch of outdated special effects to visualize the scale of the upgrading going on. One of the Cybermen straight up says he is Jackie upgraded, and I liked that it looked totally indiscernible from all the others. I can't tell if the Cyberman just said this to provoke Pete though. You'd think he wouldn't be too concerned about rewarding Pete and would have just thrown him straight into the incinerator. Then we got to see the interior of Lumic's blimp with this big old steering wheel and a computer keyboard attached to the helm. It's a great fusion of the old world and the new. It occurred to me then that if Zeppelins didn't turn out to be a total disaster in this universe, they would undoubtedly be modernized to a ridiculous degree. At least the computer ties in with Mickey's supercomputer skills. Practically by a miracle though, the control over the humans is stopped by a Cyberman fisting an object in the cockpit. Saucy. The reveal of the cyber controller was pretty cool as well. It has Roger Lloyd Pack's voice instead of Nicholas Briggs, making it even more disturbing because he's the only unique one of the bunch. His brain, sparkling eyes, and gigantic chair looked awesome too. There was some great design work in these stories. It's a shame that things were essentially over before they began though, seeing as all the people were set free before we got the chance to hear Lumic out. The conversation between Lumic and the Doc was pretty cool though. Both sides of the coin present interesting ideas. One that sees sickness and negative emotions as destructive, whilst the Doctor claims there's nothing for the Cybermen to strive for once all the bad stuff is wiped out. Unfortunately, in order to stop the Cybermen, you've just gotta put a phone with a bunch of numbers keyed in into a control panel. I really liked this shot of a dying Cyberman and the distorted reflection of the Doctor standing behind it, but then everything blows up and I couldn't really find much to grapple onto from there. Same as the cyber controller, I guess. The blimp is our hero's means of escape, so they run upstairs to the roof. I liked seeing the controller pulling himself out of this electronic throne in one last act of revenge. But as the group ran to the roof, the music from Doomsday played. I'm sure it would have had a more profound effect for a first-time viewer, viewer, but it feels a little lazy that they just used the same bit of music for both escape scenarios. Even Mickey is like, I can fly a blimp because... PlayStation. God almighty, that sounds like something Ryan Sinclair would say. The pair clinging on to the wooden rope ladder pursued by Lumic was a cool moment too, especially seeing him fall to his death. All that was great. Then all the departures got pretty emotional, and this is probably the highlight of the entire story for me. Parallel Pete wanted nothing to do with seeing his dead wife in another universe, and who can blame him? These are all seeds being set for the Doomsday finale to come though, and Mickey's departure was probably the saddest part for me. This reality is better than his own, and he now serves a purpose in helping to defeat the remains of Cybus Industries. Even when Rose pleads for him to leave, his voice breaks, and you can really feel the emotion put in by Noel Clarke here. In spite of their love for each other fading out, there's a really beautiful moment of gratitude the pair share here. All the talk of them roaming the stars and never imagining such a thing would happen on the estate, never picturing they would be permanently separated from each other. I really love the pair's goodbye, especially with that iconic music pounding beneath it all. A really great send-off for Mickey here, and lots of seeds being planted for the tragic finale to come. So, did it suck? I definitely have less to say on the second part, and now I'm kinda remembering why I felt the need to skip over it. It's not bad, it's just another one of these convenient wrap-ups from the Davies era that we've all become so accustomed to. The TV montages, the inconsequence of certain events. This episode just needed a touch of humour because that was what gave part 1 its charm. This is the action-packed second part that would be inevitable, but it does do a lot of swell things too. I'd watch this episode again just to see the Cyber Controller. He looks, acts, and sounds like a total badass. The Cybermen as antagonists are really great for this story. They definitely feel like a menacing power, and the characters involved in bringing them down are heartfelt and interesting, with the possible exception of Jake, but he gets his purpose a few episodes later. The way this story ends is super sad and is still a worthy episode of Who, even if it's essentially a big action fest. I give Age of Steel a 7 out of 10. Thanks for watching. I did this at 50 and I'm gonna do it again now that we've passed 100 patrons. A big personal thank you from me to the following patrons: Daniel Shillito, Andrew Hart, Simon Grierson, Matt Hill, Matthew Thomas, Matt B, Katality, Joel Handy, James Zipney Miles, Harry Gamble White, Wesley McKee, Hannah Kennedy, Hazardous Harry, Grady Cashin, Matthew Gashk, Bailey Robinson, Brandon Saunders, David Gerald Hyland, Kyle Quinnell, Nikki Beckett, A Lonely Guy, James Trudnicki, Luke Heptonstall, Joby 1849, Andy, Lachlan Brown, Mia Giles, Sonic Meerkat, Natasha Watmore, Newcastle Fan 2018, Ashley Fenner, Matthew Limer, Justin Getz, Adam Busby, Dennis Malema, Karen Kay, Invisible Watch, Ben Hazen, Sean Thompson, Lexi Davison, Blake, Ryan Deeth, Labyrinth Master, Scalamonger, Jack Ranson, Bonnie Can, Kieran Murray, Sam Roger, Peter Shipe, Nathan Oswald, Adam, Alex Hawker, Monty Dyson, Dan Milnes, Jason Glennie, Davis Tooniverse Gaming, Iron Jalapeno, Panics Pikachu, Peter, Grizzly Bear Vapes, Lou, Oliver Dilks, Eileen, Adam Gadsby, Crazy Minigun Bear, Blake, Will Sumners, Douglas Somerville, Beepo 2797, Matthew Adams, Ira, Luke Whipper, Ravioli for the win, Andrew Jenkins, Cranny Toko, Lucio Bertacci Moroni, Local Filthy Mage, Override _, Liam Thomas, Jack Lawler, Jasper Cowley Grimmond, Kieran O'Leary, T. Warrener, Sam Zmerny, Reese Forgan, Nick Brewer, Joseph Silver, Fowie Sense, Chase Joyle, David Howard, James Fraser, Sam Ashwood, Hugh Bettinson, Ethan Evans, Billy, Elliot Richardson, Declan Ferber, Bobster, Ethan Oldwinkle, Josh White, Craig Young, Dr. Bag PhD, Jack Belgin, Peaceful Dawn, Alexander Curtis, Peter Ong, Sonny Galligan, Reese B, James Coxall, Finn, Amy Stott, James Carr, Ben Jacob Kearns, David Fawkes. What do you think of these two episodes? Leave a comment below or join us for a Benny on the Discord server, where we'll continue this glorious discussion.